Yeah.
My name is Peter Blatchley. I'm fortunate enough and honored enough to be serving as the harbor master for Phippsburg and also sort of co-chair of the Community Wildfire Protection Planning Committee and co-chair of the Basin Firewise Community. For those of you who've never been in this building before, we have exits there. There's an exit there. We also have the fire chiefs, and not much to worry about. And there's a bathroom right here, and there's a couple of little boy and girl bathrooms down on the hallway that way. Folks, we're going to start by introducing our town administrator, who I work with every day, and please welcome Evan Goodkowski.
Let's see if we can get some. You can just use those ones. Good morning, everybody. First, just thank you all for coming out. I know Saturdays in May are rare, so thanks for spending your time here. If you are on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan Committee, could you please stand up and just be recognized that these are all the folks that have been meeting almost weekly. We put out an RFP a few months ago, and we've recently selected a SWCA out of Scarborough to be our consultant for the plan, and you're going to learn a lot today. So thank you all for coming, and I'll let Peter and the gang take it away.
Thank you, Evan. You can advance the slides. Susan is running the computer, so we are completely beholden to her. I think you can take the next slide. Maine is no stranger to wildfires. We've had many disastrous wildfires. One of the worst ever was in 1947 when the state was dry as a bone. And this was the year that Bar Harbor burned. The whole state, we had something like 200 wildfires that year. And the conditions in 1947 were almost exactly the same as they were last summer. So we got lucky, we learned a lot, but nonetheless, we're sitting on a time bomb. Advance the slide. This is shows the drought conditions in 1947. And like I said, last year, oh, this was last year's. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, George. So you can see we're pretty dry. And with a softwood forest all around us, we're at high risk. These are some of the historic fires. The summer cottage, I was the one who saw that and notified my family, and they took the skiff across the river from Sheep Island and raised the alarm. We were just very lucky that the entire peninsula of Brightwater did not burn that year. It easily could have. So this is all in a 3-year period. We had wildfires all around. Malaga Island burned. In 1961, I was 11 years old and was fighting the fire out at Ragged Island, barefoot and in short sleeves. That was stupid, but I learned something about wildfires. Next. Again, this was the fire at Popham Beach. This was all the grass out there, as you probably know, the marsh grass dries out and it turns into kindling. Some idiot shot off a firework on New Year's Eve, on New Year's Day, and lit the whole place on fire. So you saw the video running. I'm not going to run the whole video again, but it just goes to show it's close to home. We're in a very high risk area. Next. Okay, in 1957, my family managed to get a little cottage on Sheep Island across the river from the basin. And in 2011 or 2012, the big Patriots Day storm, some of you may remember, April 17th, we had a big blowdown and half the island blew down. And it was so much dry timber, we couldn't do a thing about it. There was literally thousands of softwood trees that were just piled up like pickup sticks. Next, June 24th, 2016. That is my Boston whaler as I'm leaving the dock from Brightwater to go across the river to Sheep Island, which you can see is on fire. It was reported that day that when the fire was reported, the Forest Service was told that there were 3 children unaccounted for on the island. Thanks to that, I mean, it was untrue. Thank God the report came in because we got the helicopters. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had the helicopters. The helicopters came, 2 of them with 500-gallon buckets. They picked up fresh water out of the Dingley Island Pond, which used to be an ice pond back in the day. There were a lot of fish in that water. So the joke going around with the firemen is that they were cooking dinner in a wildfire. Next. So now here's the remains. The little cottage with the green roof is my family's. And you can see how close the fire came to that and Rob Miller's place, all these places. I was on the island going around the path, and the main fire was to my left, but embers were blowing and igniting fires right next to the water. That bunch of trees and the little V there between where the red house is on the right and that little V, those were cedar trees. And they were all going up in flames. And I reported it to the firefighters and they came in. They spent 3 days going around with hoses and water tanks after the fire was extinguished, because in these pine forests, the loam catches fire and it smolders and it can come back up again. The fire in the Palisades in January this year, last year, do you remember when the Palisades burned in California? It was because the firefighters had not completely extinguished the loam where the coals were burning, and it reignited and burned all of Bel Air and Malibu, Bel Air. Next. Okay, as a result of the fire on Sheep Island, George and I got together with Ranger Kent Nelson on the far left, and our 2 communities, and 3 communities actually, as Brightwater, Windberg, and Windberg East, worked together to create a fire-wise community where we got a lot of assistance from the Forest Service. They came in and they started doing analysis of each of our individual homes, showing what we could do to fire strengthen each home. A lot of it is very common sense stuff, like don't have your firewood stacked next to the lattice work under your porch. You know, make sure that you don't have areas where embers can blow into your house, like open vents under the roof and leaves in your gutters and things like that. Very simple stuff, but it's the stuff a lot of us don't pay attention to until there's a wildfire. Okay, next. These are some standard things that we have all around this peninsula. The reason the thing happened on Sheep Island in 1908, when the first house was built on Sheep Island, the first modern house, the island was almost completely nude. So the Brightwater was the same. Most of this peninsula in Phippsburg was farmland that had been denuded by sheep in the mid 1800s. The farms became useless, and the people moved away and the forest grew back. So the forest we have here is mostly red spruce, which has a maturity of about 80 to 100 years. And we have a mature forest all around us, and it hasn't been much managed except for some of the forestry operations. This is what happened on Sheep Island. The forest grew up and we had a big windstorm. It blew down. There was nothing we could do about it. Brightwater, we have exactly the same situation. We're trying to deal with it. The whole center of Brightwater is exactly like the center of Sheep Island. And the whole peninsula here, you're gonna find stands of trees that are just like this. So go ahead, next. Trees break. If they don't settle on the ground where they can rot and get damp, they turn into kindling. Next. Okay. I'm going to turn this over here shortly. Oh, wait, what back one? This brochure is on the town's website. Okay, if you go under the town boards, it's listed as boards. The town committees is the Community Wildfire Protection Planning Committee on the town's website. Down at the bottom of the page, you'll find links to this brochure. It's extremely helpful. Things that you can do yourself to fireproof your own home. And this actually forms the basis of the Firewise communities that we'll be talking about later. Okay, next. A key element in dealing with fireproofing your home and your area is getting rid of the what they call the ladder fuels. You see over on the left, you have the like juniper and stuff like that growing along the ground, highly flammable, a lot of sap. If it catches to a small tree that's underneath a bigger tree, they can climb right to the top. And this is what happened in Sheep Island as a catastrophic fire when it gets up into the top of the trees and the whole forest is obliterated and it becomes almost impossible to put out. Next. Okay. Who's next? Chief Andy Hart, affectionately known as Panda. Chief Hart is, he worked as an electrician and then was an assistant fire chief for a long time. And for a decade or more, he's been our very beloved fire chief for the entire town. Folks, please welcome Andy Hart.
Thanks for coming today. A little history. I'm about 5 or 6 generations into this town so far, so I'm probably a local, that they'd say. I've been on the department for 50 years, chief for around 12 now. So I've seen quite a bit of the growth in town and the trees down, woods fires, every year. So what I'm here to talk about is access to roads, driveways and stuff like that. This picture shows the difference between our trucks, and this is a mid-sized car, which is a pretty big difference between the two. Be nice to have a 20-foot width of the driveway, and also 13 feet unobstructed vertical. And the turn radius of vehicles turn around in that area. The big thing about trees is they not only grow up, but they grow out also. And if they're on a corner, they start to grow out. We have a big turning radius that we have to get around. There's one down in Popham. That's a bear to get around down there. So that's why we try to get people to cut back the trees and stuff. We can't make you do it, but it would be nice to do it. These pictures, that one there is down in, the first one's in Popham. You can see all the dead brush that's around the house. If that catches on fire, that's pretty bad fire. That'll go like a match through there. The middle one, that has been improved, but you can still see the width of it. That's down on Most Mountain. And then the other one is that's actually a driveway going into a cottage that's down in Small Point, down up from Bailey Beach. We had a fire down there a few years ago, lightning strike, and we ended up doing quite a bit of damage to the truck, just trying to get in there. Some other pointers, the address signs. It'd be nice to clearly mark your address so that we can get there, not only in a fire, but a medical emergency, and to do both coming up and down, just for the fact that some of our volunteers live down in the south part and some live up north, so they kind of get to see that where that direction is. Driveway is 12-foot wide. The driveway is solid. Right now, I tell my guys not to back onto any lawns because they just sink. It's so wet down through there. Gates and stuff. It's nice to have gates, but if you gate it off and chain it off, there's no way for us to get in there unless we have a key, but that just slows everything down too. Again, overhead clearance 13.6, and then a turnaround down there, some type of turnaround. Usually we'll have to drive down 500 feet, and then we got to back up another 500 feet to get out of the driveway. So that would be nice. Next one. Is there another one? That's it. Over and done with. All right, nice. Any questions?
We're gonna take a Q&A at the end of the whole program.
All right, thank you.
I'll just note to reinforce what Hannah was just saying that I believe it was 1958. I think the date on the newspaper was wrong. But when the Butler cabin burned on Brightwater, the fire trucks couldn't get to the cabin because the driveway was so narrow. What they had to do is hand carry water pumps down to the water's edge. And even then, because then they had to pump water uphill to get to the fire, it was a total disaster. So there's many, many conditions like that that Andy is expert at dealing with or obstructing the ability to fight a fire. Nancy Sfera is, I've known Nancy as a musician before I knew her as an environmental consultant. She's a really excellent songwriter, and she writes some really funny, entertaining songs, which I wish she brought a guitar to play for us. Nancy probably knows more about the Phippsburg ecology and environment than any other living human being at this point. She spent 3 years after arriving in Maine working with the Southern Maine Preserves, where she helped develop a fire management program. And in 1999 became the Director of Science and Stewardship for the Nature Conservancy. And she was put in charge of the Basin Preserve when that was first created. So George and I have had a lot of interaction with Nancy in that context, and we're very pleased to have her here. Please welcome Nancy Sfera.
I thought about putting this to music, but I thought I'd spare you all. So I want to talk about the fundamental threats to our forests here, and I put them in 3 categories. One is forest pests and pathogens, one is invasive plants, and the other one are extreme weather events. Next slide. So with forest pests, there are a couple categories of those. I consider brown-tailed moth, winter moth, and spongy moth. They're all defoliators. Given the year and the stress that the trees are under, the defoliators may or may not cause death to the trees. They may survive and be able to leaf out again. The hemlock, woolly adelgid, and red pine scale are both plant suckers. They suck the juices out of the plant and eventually cause the tree to die. The 2 big ones are hemlock, woolly adelgid, which we do have in Phippsburg. Luckily, they do get knocked back in the wintertime. If it's a cold winter, and this past winter, 76% estimated that 76% of the adelgids were killed by the weather. So that may allow the hemlocks to come back a little bit. But there are a lot of hemlocks and important habitat here in Phippsburg. The other one is a red pine scale. The red pines here are dying, but it's more from their aging out. I don't believe they've identified red pine scale here yet. And then there are the borers. Emerald ash borer was found in Phippsburg for the first time last year. When emerald ash borer gets in the trees, the tree will likely die within a couple of years. And so we're going to lose all of our ash trees, and it kills all species of ash. And then southern pine beetle is a native insect. All these other ones are non-native. Southern pine beetle is native. It's starting to move farther north because of moderating temperatures. It's been found in York County. Nature Conservancy has been monitoring for southern pine beetle, but they haven't found it in Phippsburg yet. Next slide. And then the other category are forest pathogens. Forest pathogens, the one that we're dealing with right now is beech leaf disease. Beech have had beech bark disease since the 1920s, but now they have beech leaf disease on top of that. So we're on the cusp of maybe starting to lose a lot of our beech trees. Next slide. So where this all comes together, the trees are trying to survive these insects and pests and pathogens. And where this is starting to become harder and harder for our forests is that they have to also face these extreme weather events. I sort of have my timeline situated I moved from Aroustic to Bath 8 years ago, and I'm a big gardener. Every single year that I've been in Bath, we've had at least 1 month of summer drought, with the exception of 1 year. So over the last 8 years. So these trees not only are getting defoliated, but they have to deal with summer drought issues and higher temperatures. And when you defoliate your forest, the sun is going to beat down on the forest floor and it's going to dry it out much faster. The other thing is this is my take on it, and I've had other people say they felt it too. more and more wind. And so that wind is gonna dry out the ground. And so you're gonna have a much different fire season than we traditionally know. Most fires in Maine are human caused. We don't have that much lightning in this part of the state. So part of it's on us to take care of, but we have a lack of snow in the wintertime, this winter being an exception, lack of snow in the wintertime and earlier snow melt. And most of our fires come in the shoulder seasons. So after the snow melts and before the trees green up, and then in the fall when the leaves fall, and then before the snow comes. And so those are our most critical times a year with regards to fire. One of the things I do want to mention, when it comes to dead trees and wind throw, it's our conifer trees that I think are the most important for us to deal with. Deciduous trees, not so much of an issue. And again, if they're on the ground and decomposing, that's a good thing. They tend not to burn as much. And I do want to mention that there is a role for dead trees in our forests. So we do need dead trees for habitat and they're decomposers. And that's what rebuilds our soil. So we have to sort of not have a knee-jerk reaction to all these pests and pathogens, but we need to be able to find a way to deal with them. So I'll turn over to the next person.
Thank you, Nancy. We're honored to have Saginaw County Emergency Management Director, Philip Davis. And Phil, I'm just going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you, guys. So I'm Phil Davis. I'm the Saginaw County EMA Director. And so as things are happening, severe weather events come and are happening more frequently as well as more intensely. But Phippsburg has a lot of isolated towns, just like the rest of Maine. So how do you stay connected and how do you get informed with what is going on? We've just implemented our mass notification system. It's the RAVE system. So you can receive information through a text, a phone call, email notification, or all three, depending on however you wish to receive those alerts. Our National Weather Service automatically issues alerts through our system. And they come in based on the address that's put into the profile here. We also have, your cell phones. It's a little bit different. The RAVE system's a little bit different than what they call an iPause message. Your iPause messages are typically those that people think of Amber Alerts. Well, certain Amber Alerts can only be issued when there's certain criteria that are met. So iPause notification can be issued for evacuation orders or different things like that. That goes through our system. However, it is a completely separate system. So we're a lot of systems working within the systems itself. So trying to get everybody up and informed, how would you be notified if there was something going on in your area? Do your neighbors know about things that are going on? Do you have that? We always tell everybody to make sure that they're signed up for our emergency alert system. We also understand that some of this is technology driven and people aren't very tech savvy. So we understand that. So how can we do that? We can come in and help you actually sign up for the system itself. We do have forms here today that we can get you signed up, as well as we have no problem coming and sitting and doing groups, doing individual sessions. Anybody can call our office at any point in time and get that information out there. So we're really trying to, let you guys know of what is going on and what is important to you, as well as signing you up for those emergency alerts. So you have that information available to you. Communication is the biggest breakdown in any natural disaster that happens. So this is one way that you can get that information that you may need. Nope.
Folks, after the Sheep Island fire, I tried to get the Sheep Island community to become part of the Firewise. Interestingly, even after that experience, they didn't take the bait. But on the other side of the river, George Thomas and I did. And George has been a kingpin in organizing and leading the Firewise community effort in our community to the point that it has been one of the most successful and recognized Firewise communities in the state of Maine. So folks, please welcome George Thomas.
I must say there was a moment of panic when I was thinking that we would have more board members here than audience. So it's great to see all these faces and to know that you're all interested in this critical topic. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the grant that we received because your being here gives us all your numbers times 2 as hours toward our community match. So thank you very much. These are hours that if you're here, we don't have to be doing it ours. Peter and I don't have to be putting in extra hours. So this is great. But the most important thing to know is that the grant is both an opportunity for the community, but we also, it's a contract with us that we have to match 25% of the value in community hours. And the advantage of that, it turns out, is that the more you are involved, the more you learn about the issues, the more you become preachers to help people understand the risks that are here. And so in many ways, the community component of this grant is crucial as a form of teaching and a form of communication. The piece that I'm most interested in is beyond meetings. We're going to be doing some community research projects. And at the end of this meeting, we're going to have 3 tables with signups that we hope some of you will sign up on to either work on the infrastructure questions, which roads are adequate, which roads are too narrow. We're going to be listing them, measuring them, and creating a database of what the roads are like here so that Andy can get his fire trucks to you. We think that's a good idea. We're going to have an environmental look at the various environmental issues, the invasives, the dead tree areas. And again, there's now an IMAP invasives app that Kelsey Daigle will tell you about later. And we'll have a community-wide people looking at and finding and isolating and photographing and listing where these things are so that we can begin to treat the invasives more effectively. And then finally, as Phil was talking about, we have a problem that we can't communicate very well with everybody. So Peter and Phil are going to talk at the end of this about how we can get at that. And we're going to have a work group to try to figure out how to be more successful. This is all internal to us and benefits the entire community as you learn more about it. The other big piece is that we intend as a part of this project to create 3 new Firewise clusters this year and 3 more next year. And that will give us a total of 9 small neighborhood groups scattered across all of Phippsburg that become models for how to do fire safety around our houses. And how to, in the end, make our whole community safer. So that will be a piece that we're going to be looking for and recruiting 3 communities, 3 areas this year. Fiddler's Reach with its long winding road in, that if a fire started along that road would have trouble getting out. That's a group that might be interested. Sabasco is similarly isolated and would be a great area to do this. Painted Point would be a great cluster where there's a number of people there that could form a community group. Parker Head has already enlisted and we're going to be grabbing them. Popham Beach is a community that has similar risks. So we're going to try to create 3 of these communities this year, 3 more next year, end up with 9. And if more groups show up and say we want to be a Firewise community, we won't stop you, we'll help you. The great advantage of the main program for Firewise communities is you get personal tutorials from the Maine Forest Service. And these guys bring incredible knowledge. They work patiently with communities until people begin to start getting involved. They provide brochures and insights. They help evaluate houses. What can we do about this around this house? If the neighbors show up, they discover they all have the same problems. Our log pile is next to the house. Maybe that's not a good idea. And then they also send a crew at the end of the summer to clean up all the stuff that you guys have put out by the road to as firewise fuels that ought to disappear. And they actually do the work to clear out all that stuff for you. So it's a great program. We've loved it in our 3 communities. And we urge all of you to consider this as a part of how you can make Phippsburg safer. To that end, our next speaker is the guy in uniform, Art Lavoie. Art has been a member of the Maine Forest Service for 26 years.
Yeah.
It's not possible. It's like he's 26 years old. I mean, how did he pull this off? But he's been a ranger north and south of Phippsburg. And now I think it's really incredible. He's on the Urban Wildfire Committee, which is looking at exactly the issues that we're most concerned about. So please welcome Art Lavoie.
Thank you. I know, I just started getting a few grays in the last year. My wife hates it because she was turning gray in like her late 20s. So I did grow out some facial hair the other day, which we're not allowed to do a lot of at our job. And my mustache had a lot of gray in it, so made me look more my age. First of all, I just want to say, I don't know any of you, but wow, you have a group of educators, leaders. I am super impressed with everybody who's talked here today. I almost wish all my rangers could have been here to sit in. So for a community, you have got some people to lean on. You have us to lean on, but you have got a strong group here in Phippsburg. And I can see that that's why they've done as much as they already have. And they'll be driving this ship going forward, which will also take a lot of community buy-in. So, but you have a really strong leadership group. So we can do next slide. And I will say, probably people have heard, and a lot of you have all worked with Kent Nelson. Kent is our expert when it comes to wildland urban interface. I am on the committee, but Kent that is his job. He's a ranger specialist, and he had a family matter this weekend, so he couldn't make it. So you are stuck with me. So the Maine Forest Service has been around since 1891. We are like natural resource law enforcement. Wildfire is our priority, but we also deal with the timber industry and any natural resource, so air quality, water quality. But our bread and butter is wildfire. Next. This is, so my district, I work out of Gray, basically Bethel, Route 2 corridor towards Augusta and down this way. So, York County, Cumberland County, Andro, Oxford, Saginaw. It's a big area. So this is a fire that we had within the last 10 years in the Saco River District. It was in right on the line of wells, and it burned over 300 acres. So, we think of southern Maine not having a lot of big fires. Here's one fire that was over 300 acres. One thing I wanted to point out is, you notice how windy it was today? We're in drought conditions. This fire, again, driven by wind. It was a wind out of the southwest. You can see all the homes above it, exactly where that fire was headed. So you can imagine the fire chief would be very overwhelmed if he had to have a fire truck at every one of those homes. So that's why this program is such an important thing. The work that you guys can do around your homes can protect you if a fire like this comes, because if there's 100 homes threatened, we don't have 100 fire trucks to sit at everybody's house and protect every house. So there's a lot of work that you guys could do at very little cost or no cost that would really protect your homes from wildfire. So yeah. This is just a snapshot actually of last year, just the month of August. We don't think about Maine having a lot of fires, but just last year in August, we had 250 fires. In my 26 years, it was the busiest August we have ever had. Burned 114 acres, and it's because of the drought. We're dry. The ground is super dry, so our big fuels are drying out. Those blue dots, blue and red dots, that's where each fire was. You can see there's more in the south than there are in the north because we have human start fires. Like Nancy was saying, we don't get a lot of lightning fires. I bet over the whole year, maybe we have 10, 12, 15 lightning fires. And luckily, typically when we have lightning, we have downpours. So they don't get real big. Half of them get put out by themselves, or they're just smoldering when we find them, compared to when you're out west and lightning goes through, you can literally watch the hillside start to smoke because they're not getting a lot of rain. It's kind of tough to read, but I believe the blue says recreational and ceremony. That's your campfires. And again, this is just 1 month, but this is pretty common for the whole year. So a lot of our fire starts come from debris burning, which is that bottom red sliver. Usually debris is number one. So people burning debris and just not doing a good job putting it out, or they burned all weekend and Sunday evening it was smoking and just smoldering and it was all gray ash. So they thought it was good. It's never good. It'll hold embers for days. Like until somebody sprays water and then mixes it around, even just putting water on the top doesn't fully extinguish a burn pile. But between campfires, which is that blue on the top, and then debris burning a brush pile, the red, and then you see the orange. So the last year we had a lot. That's equipment. We had a lot. I think some of it maybe is just manufacturing isn't as good as it was 20, 30 years ago. Catalytic converters, so the exhaust on your cars, those catalytic converters are small aluminum pieces. They do break down and they fall out of your exhaust. And they're 1,000 degrees when they come out and they start roadside fires. So that's one of the big reasons for equipment. Also, I'll say one that's really important, especially spring and fall, and I always preach it to people. It's cold, so you start a fire inside in the wood stove, and then what do you do with your ashes? You shovel them out into a metal bucket. It can sit there for 3 or 4 days, and you think those ashes are out, so you dump them on your back lawn or on the edge of the woods. Again, that'll hold embers and heat for a week. So unless there's water put on it and stirred around, we have a lot of people who dump ashes on their backyard and then start wildfires a day or two later. So this is just August. I'll say 250 fires. Last year we had like 870 fires statewide, and we burned around 600 acres. Pretty typical. I'd say that the normal year in Maine is usually 600 fires and about 500 acres burned. So that was a crazy August last year. We canceled Rangers days off. We brought in what we call when needed firefighters. They're firefighters who train with us and go out of state when we go and help California or Florida or wherever we're going across the country. So we brought in call when needed firefighters during the month of August, and we had engines staffed and we had task force. It was you saw the helicopter. We have multiple helicopters. We had interns who are the ones who would be doing the chipping. So if you cleaned your brush and brought it out and we come through with our chipper, these summer interns that we get from colleges, they're the ones doing the chipping, but they're also the ones in that helicopter helping to fight fires. Next. This is just a trend. I think Nancy said, in the state of Maine, somebody here said, it's that bookshelf fire season. Springtime is really busy for us. We usually get most of our fires in the spring. This is 2024, and why I think Kent wanted to show you. We had a super busy fall, and we always have fires in the fall, but October, November, it was busy. And that was the same time the Northeast, Connecticut had some really big fires. We went down and helped Connecticut. Massachusetts was burning, Rhode Island was burning, New Hampshire got busy. So we sent a lot of Maine Rangers and firefighters and helped some of those other states in the Northeast. But so in 2024, you can see we had a super busy fall. Again, drought conditions, not getting enough rain. Why do we have so many fires in the spring? Anybody know? Our air humidity is super dry. It's not humid yet, and things haven't greened up outside. So the air's drier, causes more fires. And then we get some green up and we have some humidity in the summer. So typically in the summer, things quiet down, and then in the fall, it picks up again. All kinds of brochures. Some of these people have talked some, but we talk about defensible space. And so Kent is saying, how do you reduce the risk of home ignition. Does it look like if we had a fire come through here that this house might be in trouble? Yes, like there's not a lot of that defensible space where A, the fire's not gonna burn anything, or B, a firefighter could get in there and help protect your home. So this is what we're talking about, that 30-foot area around your house to get rid of, any flammable stuff. Not all of it, but get your dry firewood away from your home, get the leaves, away from the edges of your house. Any place where wind eddies, it's not typically the huge flame. There's a great picture. So you see that first area is super important, that immediate area 0 to 5. You see they don't have a lot of bushes. Personally, I hate bark mulch. I know it looks beautiful around your house. It ignites extremely easy because of the chemicals and preservatives in that bark mulch. So I like the crushed stone, or now they're crushing the red brick that looks beautiful, a little bit more money, but it doesn't burn. And then that intermediate area says 5 to 30. Like there have been all kinds of studies showing wildfires coming through around homes. And if that 30-foot area is good and clean, trees are spaced out or pruned up, that has a lot to do with whether your home is going to survive or not. What was the slide before? Okay. And obviously you can go up here and sign for this, the mainfireweather.com. It's a website. They'll send you a text message. They can send you email, but you can also go there and see the fire danger every day, and let's be honest, when it's high, very high extreme fire danger, it's just when we need to be even more careful with our fires, compared to when it's low and moderate. So this is a great website you can go to and see what the fire danger is in your area. And then, there's 48 field rangers in the state. So 6 of them work for me, and we cover like 5-6 counties. There's not that many of us out there, but we are here to help educate. We're here to help prevent wildfires. Kent is super involved. I'm involved, but it takes everybody. It takes the community to want to do the work. This group right here can't do it all for you. They need help. They need volunteers. But we are also here to help. So George mentioned the community wildfire protection plan. Like we can come in and do an inspections. We can write a plan for you guys, show you some areas of high risk, make recommendations, but still there needs to be work done on your side too. Is there one more, or was that the end? I'm way better at answering questions. So when we have the Q&A afterwards, I'll be there.
Thank you, Art. That was awesome. When we first started, first of all, I wanted to say the reason we have this grant is because of George Thomas. George worked for 3 years. He was encouraged to apply for a grant because our community was so successful. Kent Nelson encouraged us to apply for a grant. George did 99.9% of the work. It took 3 years. The first year, Phippsburg was rated as too wealthy, that we didn't hit the poverty mark well enough. So even though in every other category we were the highest score, we couldn't get the grant. The next year it looked like we got the grant, but something happened politically and the money got pulled out. And then this year, finally, we got the money through the main emergency management agency. And that was all due to the tenacity and hard work, hundreds, maybe thousands of hours that George put in. So let's give George some recognition. When we started pulling this plan together and to create a committee, we kind of put the word out. We didn't know who was going to show up from the community. And boy, were we delighted when we learned we had an engineer who wanted to be part of the committee. Folks, the joke about engineers is, what do you call a hard hat on an engineer? And the answer is redundant. But Brad does not fit that category. I'd like you to welcome Brad Hart.
Thank you, Peter. When we started this and whatever, part of this grant, obviously, that George went over, is we've hired a consultant, SWCA. And we're lucky, we went out to a number of folks, what did we get, 6? All right, RFPs that we actually got responses for. We chose SWCA for a number of reasons. We're lucky because they have about 1,700 employees, 46 offices, and one in Scarborough. Nobody else had an office locally nearby, so they can get to us very easily. It's a ecology and environmental consultancy group, and they have a specialty when it comes to community-wide protection plans. Ariana Porter is going to be our project manager from SWCA. She's going to be managing and coordinating 9 people that within her group that have been assigned to us in all sorts of different issues. They've had a lot of experience in doing these projects in Maine itself. Just a couple of examples is Chepegway and Long Island, Maine, Cape Ann, Massachusetts, Blue Hill, Maine, Dukes County, Massachusetts, which is also includes Martha's Vineyard. Ariana has a BA in biology from Colby College and also a master's degree in ecology from Colorado State University. Ariana?
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for turning up and turning out. I'm so encouraged to see everyone, and the message has been echoed many times that it's a community wildfire protection plan. We need your help and your involvement, and everyone, no matter what, has a role they can play. So thank you very much for being here. Next slide. I just want to talk a little bit about what a community wildfire protection plan is for those of you who don't know. I think it's 2003, the Healthy Forest Restoration Act came out, which named that community wildfire protection plans could be made at any scale, from the homeowner scale all the way up. I've done them at the county scale. And the Healthy Forest Restoration Act says that CWPPs, or community wildfire protection plans, need to be collaborative. So thank you so much for being here. They must identify measures to reduce hazardous fuels. So if you don't know what that means, come talk to us at the tables. We've got lots of handouts. And they must identify methods to protect communities that are at risk. So that's why we're here in Phippsburg. You all have heard a lot about why we are at risk today, and I want to thank this panel for setting me up so well with that information. Lastly, the plan must identify measures to reduce structural ignitability. So reduce the likelihood that a home or a business or a building will ignite as a result of a fire. A CWPP, I want to be really clear, it just puts tools in your toolbox. It doesn't mandate anything. It makes recommendations and sets priorities for action so that if you all go out and do what George did and apply for another grant, you can look at the plan and take a look at, okay, what's our highest priority project that the plan recommended to reduce wildfire risk? Where can we be really efficient with our grant funds as they come in? So I wanted to be clear about that piece. Next slide. So it's pretty small text, so I'll read it all out to you guys. What are the benefits of a community wildfire protection plan? Well, here we are, community engagement and education and collaboration. It encourages you all as residents in your communities to work together on wildfire preparedness. Education and awareness, right? So taking a look at defensible space. You might go home to your homes after this morning and take a look at some trees and be like, oh gosh, okay, I've got some work to do here. Environmental stewardship, reducing fuels, making healthy forests so they're more resilient to these extreme weather events, and access to funding opportunities. So there's a large federal grant program called Community Wildfire Defense Grants. You can't get funding for those unless you have a CWPP that's at least 10 years old. There are many other grant opportunities at the state and local level that also require these plans to even make you eligible for the funding. So Phippsburg is going to be way ahead of the game when it comes to being eligible for all this funding coming down the pipe. And this is really great for your community. Next slide. So what's the process? I'll talk you through this as well because it's super teeny tiny on the screen. So our first process is to convene decision makers. Our next thing that we will do is engage partners. So it might be federal partners, but it's probably here mostly state and local partners because there's not a lot of federal land. This graphic was created more out west where people are doing a lot more wildfire planning, where there's more federal work. But here we're working with Maine Forest Service and our state, the county partners. Involve stakeholders. Here you all are. Thank you so much. And we need to collect a lot of data. So after me, we'll be hearing about that volunteer sign up process. And then we'll use all that data to create maps of very important attributes when it comes to wildfire planning. So what's at risk on the ground and where is our highest risk areas? Where are there resources for firefighters to help fight fire? We need to make a fair amount of mapping if we're going to understand, okay, what are we going to do about our risk? So that's the next step. So conducting a hazard and risk assessment and rating the entire community from low to extreme risk. And then setting your priorities like I talked about at the beginning. After that, we'll develop a monitoring strategy because a plan's great, but you need to make sure you put it into action and make sure you can't just in New England go out and treat fuels once. You have to go back and do it again and again and again. So we'll be talking about monitoring. And then we'll be finalizing the CWPP at the end of this. The public will have 2 weeks to read the plan, comment on it, give us your comments, and then we'll be taking your comments, adapting the plan and finalizing the plan. So we really ask you to spread the word to all your community. You all are the spark plugs here this morning. We need you to go out and spread the word to other people. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of skim through this because everyone else has done an amazing job talking about this. Wildfire here is not a hypothetical. It's a constant and increasing risk. And fire adapted ecosystems are present here in Phippsburg. So 100% of buildings and communities here have some type of risk, and risk is increasing in Maine and across New England. So this is really important that y'all are here today. Why is Phippsburg especially vulnerable? You've all heard it today already. Dense forest, accumulated fuels, drought, heat, longer fire seasons. What is a fire season anymore? I'm not sure. You saw that in January, you know, the Popham Beach fire. Ignitions, and then limited ingress and egress here. So if a fire is coming down from north to south, how are you all getting out and how are firefighters getting in? So that's a very real risk here. Next slide. What's at risk? So you'll hear me talk a lot about highly valued resources and assets. That's talking about what do you all want to protect from wildfire? So I'll be asking you through this process here, what are your resources that you want to protect? Homes, neighborhoods, your schools, your trails, forest health, view sheds, the economy, tourism. What are the things you'd like to protect? Next slide. I want to touch a little bit on the transition from wildfire to urban fire. So you're seeing this a lot in LA, the Marshall Fire in Boulder, Lahaina in Maui, right? So most homes don't ignite from flames. They ignite from embers. And so wind-driven embers, who was it, Art talking about wind-driven fires, can travel over a mile ahead of a flaming front. And so they ignite roofs and gutters, fences and decks, bark mulch, vegetation and fuels near structures. So there's a fair amount of handouts on these tables about how to protect your home from embers. The number one thing you can do is put 1/8 of an inch screen up in your eaves so the embers can't get into your house and your attic that way. But small vulnerabilities can lead to entire structure loss. I think I have a visual on the next slide. Okay, it might be the next one, but I just want to talk a little bit about where your homes are the most vulnerable. So you walk away with this information today. Roofs, gutters, vents and eaves, like I just talked about, decks and fences, right? If you can get 2 feet of metal fencing leading up to your house instead of wood, that's a huge help. And then siding and windows as well. Next slide. So what can you do around your home? There's a lot of handouts here. Use ignition resistant materials, keep decks and fences from contacting the home if they're wooden, clean your roofs and gutters, help your neighbor clean their gutter, and putting screen over the vents and your eaves. I can talk more about that after. Also, let's talk about being prepared to leave at a moment's notice, right? So we talked a lot about communication breakdown. If you sign up for these alerts, and I please urge you all to do that, have an evacuation plan, have a family evacuation plan, have a go bag. I lived in Boulder for 8 years, and I never thought on the Front Range of Colorado I'd be evacuating the Marshall Fire from my apartment, but I was, and that fire destroyed 1,000 homes in a few hours. And so it's really important everyone has a go bag with prescriptions, a family meetup map, clothes, water, food, that sort of a thing. Next slide. So just to recap, how to reduce your risk. Number one, reduce the ignitability of your home, but that also means you're helping the firefighters protect your home, make it defensible for them, keep them safe. Reduce or remove fire pathways to your home and encourage everyone in your community, everyone you meet to also take action. Okay, what comes after the CWPP? I had one more slide. So after the planning process is done, we're depending on the community to implement the projects that are recommended, depending on what the project is, of course, but there'll be things like fuels treatments, public education, policy changes, and increasing fire response capacity. Also, we want to, over time, evaluate what's working and what's not. So every 5 years, we recommend a CWPP be updated. So we're going to be monitoring and adaptively managing this process over time. Next steps on the planning process is collecting data, and we'll be putting out a public survey for the plan in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. And I believe that is my last slide. Yes, thank you so much.
Folks, if we had gotten a $2 million grant, we wouldn't need to be doing this next section. But the amount of money we got means that we, as a community, need to do a lot of the work. And the work is in the data collection. So this is where we get deeply involved. We have to collect data for the infrastructure that we have here in the community. How do you do with roads? George talked about this a little bit, the width of roads, driveways, where are the pinch points. We have to talk about environmental situations, the threats of environmental species, how they can add to our fire risk, and then communication. So we're gonna hear from the next three people in those three categories. It's my pleasure to introduce Kelsey Daigle. She's the Land Relations Manager for the Nature Conservancy. She has had a lifelong love for the outdoors, starting as a child in northern Maine, followed by trail work in Glacier National Park and all over Maine, then taking on park ranger jobs and leading to a desire to get people outside, fostering their connection and relationship to the land. So folks, let's welcome Kelsey Daigle.
The short person over here. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey Daigle, Land Relations Manager for the Nature Conservancy in Maine. I've been with TNC for 11 years now, and took the very large empty shoes that Nancy Sparrow left behind. And so I managed the Basin Preserve here in Phippsburg, almost 2,000 acres. But I also manage lands in Georgetown and Rousick, as well as down to Portland, up to Belfast, a big area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of invasive plants and pests that you're going to find here in Phippsburg. And it's not an exhaustive list at all, but it's what you're going to find most often. And the ones that will most affect the risk of fire. Next slide, please. So Nancy mentioned some of these already. The most common plants that you're going to find here are knotweed. Some people call this bamboo for some odd reason. Bittersweet, that's the vine that grows up from the ground and up through the trees and strangles them. There's barberry, the bush that has the bright red berries and very sharp thorns that try to get you when you try to take it out. And birds really love them, which is how this barberry spreads so quickly. There's honeysuckle. It's an early leafing out bush that smells really good in the spring, but highly invasive. And then multiflower rose, which is the prickly vines, the small white flowers that line the roads often. I don't have a lot of pictures of those up here, but at the table later, I have lots of guides that you can look through. And then we have the pests, which of course Nancy talked about as well. And they're doing, unfortunately, a very good job at killing our trees. All right, so you heard emerald ash borer was found this past fall. I'm actually the one who found it, which was a really sad day. So you can see here on the bottom right, I'm out with the Maine Forest Service. We put together these trap trees in areas where we girdle the ash tree in the spring, and any emerald ash borer in the area will fly to that tree. And then in the fall, you peel it and look for the serpentine galleries, which show you that the emerald ash borer is there. So as we peeled this tree, we found those galleries. It just so happens that in that same exact stand of ash trees, which is in the basin, we had treated those trees in the spring with an herbicide that will allow 12 of those trees to live through the onslaught of emerald ash borer, which hopefully will help to reseed that area once the ash trees die. And that is an opportunity for those of you who have beautiful ash trees on your property, and I can tell you more about that if you ask later. And then hemlock woolly adelgid. So on the bottom left, you can see the little woolly white puffs that's underneath the hemlock needles. And then the crawlers. So right now, crawler stage, they've come out of their little white poofs and they're starting to crawl around. They don't fly, but the more people, animals, pets, vehicles drive past these hemlocks, those little crawlers get on you and then move to the next hemlock. So it spreads rather quickly. And unfortunately in Phippsburg, there's a lot of hemlocks who are dead or dying because of this pest. I was very happy to hear from Nancy that 76% of them have died over the winter, though. That's very good. And then winter moth. So as you all know, the evidence of it is still very apparent on the ground when you walk through. There's holes through all of the leaves. A couple of years ago, they defoliated oaks, fruit trees, and then they moved on to the maples and the beech. And so not this spring, but last spring, I worked with the Maine Forest Service to put a biological control, a parasitoid fly called the Sizenus albicans. We released it in the basin near the water so it can get to other parts of Phippsburg. And they are a parasitoid fly that does this weird zombie-like action where they enter into the caterpillar and then kill the winter moth fly. So it takes a couple of years for that to show significant decrease in the winter moth, but I'm hopeful that this year maybe you'll see a difference here. And we released that same fly in Georgetown, and I live in Georgetown. So we're hoping to see the same thing because last year our trees were all defoliated. Very sad. All right, and then we have the southern pine beetle. Oh, and the Sizenus fly you can see is that little middle picture. I have a great video of when I released them. It was really fun. And then southern pine beetle. So as Nancy said, it's been moving north. It's been found in York County. And so we have these pine beetle traps in 3 places in Phippsburg that I monitor every couple of weeks, pull the insects out, send them to the Maine Forest Service entomology lab, looking for this insect. In the meantime, the Nature Conservancy is looking at different ways that we can sort of pre-treat our pitch pine stands because pitch pine is a beautiful, vulnerable habitat. Okay, so next slide. So this I want to mention, a new invasive plant that I have not seen here in Phippsburg yet, but it is in Georgetown. And it is highly invasive. It is stilt grass that once it is established, it can quickly take over the understory. You can see like there's nothing else growing underneath the trees here. The seeds will stay viable for 6 to 7 years in the soil or the stems. And so it's one of these plants that you have to keep going back over and over again to try to take it out. Thankfully, you pull them out, they pull out really easily, but you have to stay on top of it. So I know every time I go into the basin, I'm looking for this grass, and I have a lot of materials over here to help you try to identify it because it's an early response or early detect rapid response species. So once we find it, we want to respond right away. And then another one I'll just mention, beech leaf disease, which is a nematode rapidly working its way through our beech trees, which sadly already had the beech bark disease. Now the leaves are starting to crumple up, get dry. Oh, something else I want to mention about this stilt grass is in the fall, it dries out and it becomes this thatch that is highly flammable. All right, next slide. All right, so this is actually what I'm here to talk about, which is the IMAP Invasives app. This is an app that a lot of land trusts use and others to map different invasive plants around your property. We use it at the Nature Conservancy on all of the properties that we manage. So I created an organization and project for the town of Phippsburg, CWPP. And if you're interested, you can download this app. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on anything that you have internet with in the woods or at your house. And you can map where each of these invasive plants or pests, so it's still like hemlock woolly adelgid in your hemlock trees or EAB in ash. And you'll see on the right where all the green dots, those are all of the places where we have mapped invasive plants and pests in Phippsburg, and you can see part of Arausic there as well. And as you can see there, it's in our conservation lands. So it would be really great if all of you were able to do the same thing in other parts of Phippsburg so that we have a better idea of where these plants and pests are. Chad Hammer, who is the invasive plant biologist, who is works for the Maine Natural Areas Program. He is going to be out with me on June 10th, as well as Nancy, at the basin, where we are going to teach you some of the invasive plants to be on the lookout for. I think there will be places to look also at where hemlock woolly adelgid is. And then also how to use the IMAP app. So I can give you some materials today to give you more information about the app. I can show you how to sign up, but then on the 10th, and this is going to be rain or shine, we'll be in the field together learning how to use this. Please bring bug spray, not only for the bugs, but also because there are ticks. Ticks also love invasive plants. So you want to be prepared for that. I also have a sign up sheet. So if you're able to come on the 10th, we'd like for you to sign up so we have some idea of how many people are going to be there. And there's a map, which I realize is a little difficult. The red arrows where we're going to be, there's not a whole lot of road signs. We're going to put some arrows to where we're going to be. But really, if you take 209 Basin Road and you don't take any turns, you will eventually come to us. Okay, that's what I got. Okay.
I want to emphasize that the sign up aspect of what she just said. Each of these tables, you can see environmental mapping, infrastructure mapping, and communications and community building. When we're done here, and does anybody need to stand up? Are you? I mean, these chairs are not comfortable. If you like to stand up for a minute, just do that, and let's just stretch, and because we got another 10 minutes or so to go. Stand up, but don't leave. Okay, folks, while you're standing, I'll do the next introduction. I already introduced Brad, but I didn't say very much about him. I won't do another joke at your expense. Brad is a risk engineer and president of the Parker Neck Association. He brings us really remarkable skills and knowledge to the issues of environmental risks that shape our project. In his own research for today's topic presented here, he grasped the enormity of the issues that we face and the need to understand the size and the character of our roads. Folks, let's give another welcome to Brad.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to be talking about actually the committee, the subcommittee. We have 3 of them. This is the second one you heard about. The resources and the infrastructure of town. Resources say, what kind of resources? Well, according to Arch, there are 6 helicopters in the state, okay, that could potentially be used, to dump water, okay? They may not be all that large, but they help out dramatically, okay? Particularly with what you're gonna see. We've already talked about Route 209. We're on a peninsula. We got a fire up at the north end with a north wind coming down. Look out, where are we gonna go? I hope everybody has a boat. Okay, maybe next slide. Okay. look at some of these roads. If anybody here has gone around town, okay? This is Samuel's Landing. Look how narrow this road is and meanders around. Think about Andy trying to get a fire truck into some of these. Parker Head, look at this pinch point. This is a main road. This used to be a state road, okay? We all know where Parker Head is. Look at that pinch point and the sharp turn. Next slide. Okay, now, here's some that I actually took, okay? Here's a driveway, 8 to 9 feet wide, 1,600 feet long. How are you gonna get a fire truck in there, all right? How are you gonna turn it around once you get it in there? I can't imagine. Here's another one. By the way, it took me 30 minutes to find these roads driving around here on Monday. Here's a 9-foot driveway, 600 foot long. Look how narrow that is. And look at the trees coming in on the side, okay? Here's another one, 9 foot, 300 foot long. We have this all over town. And if you want a response, a good response from the fire department, think about where they're gonna have to park their fire truck or get one of their smaller trucks in that have a smaller pump. And they're gonna have to run 600 feet of 1.5-inch hose in. They're gonna have to lug that in. I mean, it's just a monumental task, okay? Next slide. And I think ultimately that's mine, okay? The thing is, we gotta start looking at these things to see what we can do to improve it, to mitigate the hazards involved and be able to get the first response in quickly. Wildfire spreads rapidly. And what we want to make sure is we can get it out quickly before it turns into tens or hundreds of acres.
We've already talked about most of the stuff that we're going to cover here for the next couple minutes, but I'm going to bring Phil Davis back and talk a little bit more about the how the program. So we're not going to get spammed by the RAVE program. It can be highly focused. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yep, so everybody has the opportunity to sign up for what is important to them. So in your profiles, you're able to set up everything that you want, whether that is an alert from Phippsburg, whether that is an alert from Bath. You go in and choose what those alerts are. You know, we understand that there's a lot of spam messages going out there. So I will say, if you do get text messages from them, they do come from 5-digit phone numbers. We're only issuing these alerts when it's something that is important and really needs to, you know, protect your lives and stuff like that. So we're not going to over alert you for, you know, different things, just, you know, as powers out. We're gonna send those emergency alerts so that way that you are aware of the actions that you need to take to actually protect yourselves as well as any of your property or anything like that.
You can do on the Phippsburg area.
Yep, so we go in on the backside of it. It is all based on the alerts. So you'll see in the profiles, you have the option to pick what sections you want, if you want it as get the town of Phippsburg, and then we can also narrow that down even more. So if it's more localized and things like that, we are able to go in and make sure that it's important to you. It is not based on where your phone is actually located. It is the information that you are choosing. So that's where a lot of the differences come in between the different systems that we use. We're trying to get the word out. Right now, the county only has 4% of the population signed up for the alerts. So we really encourage you guys to sign up and get that information as best you can. Yeah.
You see the QR code up there. We have these flyers around on every one of these tables and on the table out front. You can just take your cell phone and take that. It'll bring up the website, and you can literally do it on your cell phone. It takes about 2 minutes, and you're protecting yourself. There are other ways that we also need to communicate. Those of you who are going to participate in developing for your neighborhoods a Firewise program is hardly anything better for community building than working together. You're getting out there, doing work together. Whatever work you can do. It's like some of us are getting a little old to be chopping wood and carrying trees around. But just getting together and talking about it and planning is a huge aspect of community building, getting to know your neighbors and getting to know how to contact them. Another thing that we haven't really formally embraced, but I'm aware of, is called Map Your Neighborhood. And this is a program that I believe was developed out west, where you get to know who are the vulnerable people in your neighborhood, who is going to need some assistance if there is an emergency. These things are, and they're created by having little group meetings, calling neighbors over to your house, figuring out who has, kids that are, going to need to be taken care of, pets, elderly people who have mobility issues, things like that. These are things that we can and should do, and they're all tangential to making our community safer, but also building a stronger, vibrant sense of community. I think it's time for us to talk a little. You guys have been so patient. I don't know how you've done it, sitting here for an hour and 10 or 15 minutes. Now it's time for questions and answers. So if you have something you'd like to ask, we're all here. Raise your hand and it's Bob?
Yes, thank you.
Bob, why don't you stand up so we can all see you, and you're also on camera?
Well, I didn't hear everybody mention anything about fire started transmission lines with the utilities. Is that part of what's being done?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen a lot, usually in those windy events, or there's contact. And I'll say, I wouldn't have believed it unless I just saw it the other day. Maybe other people have seen it, but a large hawk landed on one just the other day, and it must have touched a pole at the same time. And he is no longer with us and started a fire. So yeah, power lines do start. Usually it's from vegetation contact. They spark down, but
If
yeah.
something happens out west, sparks out of the big transmission lines.
Yeah, at least in the city, most of our ignition sources with transmission lines are smaller ones, close to homes, close to the side of the road.
And Ariana just whispered to me on the side that transmission lines is one of the things that we want to map, where we have those vulnerable points where trees are close to. Sure, you've been all delayed in traffic going up and down 209 with the CMP hired crews cutting back all the brush and stuff. But George has something to say.
And one cool thing is that there is actually a map of all of the power lines in Phippsburg that goes through all the hierarchy from the main lines all the way down to the little local lines. So it gives you a chance when your power is out, you can look at this map and say, oh, it's probably these people who caused my problem. But there's a lot of information out there that we will be using and engaging because we've been pushing CMP. We did a loop around the Brightwater where Peter is. And we've spotted like 20 trees that are all dead and all right near these power lines. And we circled them with tape and basically said, well, what about this? And they came and did one. So maybe 20 years from now, we'll have them all taken care of.
Yeah, we're just waiting for those trees to come down so we have a power outage just so they can come back. Any other questions? Jennifer in the back. Jennifer, would you come forward? So because this is all being recorded and you're on Zoom. So if you can speak into the microphone.
My question is, I am thinking about building a barn with unpainted hemlock siding, and I want to know if that would be vulnerable to pests.
The question was untreated hemlock vulnerable to pests. Nancy.
No, they probably wouldn't be an issue because the insects are going after the sap out of the tree. And so once it's been cut down, I don't think it's a risk. You might have other pests in there depending on the condition of the barn, but it wouldn't be hemlock woolly indulgent. Yeah.
Thank you. Sir, would you come forward? Introduce yourself. Our portable mic's not working, sorry.
Morning, I'm Bumper White. I live down Small Point. And my question is, we've been doing Firewise for about 6 years. I've been working with Jennifer and Ken. And we are hitting the road in terms of what about fire prevention fatigue. And we are in a summer community. And so we have people that come for short periods of time during the summer. And the concern is there any research done or any problem solving that's been done in terms of how do you battle fire prevention fatigue among a community where there are only people there for months, weeks at a time?
Marty, you have a response for that?
I'll kind of shoot from the hip here. That's a really tough issue, and that's like, I'm super impressed by the amount of people here today, because some communities just don't get buy-in. And so it's great having communities who do have buy-in, and then just keeping the energy. And I wasn't BSing earlier when I said I was super impressed with the group of people who presented here today. I think it starts from the top. When you have George and everybody here, the harbor master, because I'm horrible with names, but when you have a group who's driven and can kind of keep that ball rolling, I think that's maybe the only way to prevent that fatigue or that message to get stale and people do really good for a few years and then stop cleaning the brush around their house or stop cleaning their gutters. And 10 years from now, we're right back to where we were on day one. So it starts at the top, having a strong message and just sort of keeping that energy flowing so people are motivated. And then your other part was a lot of the people who are only here for summer help. And, I guess I would say that's for good neighbors to spread the message and try to help and try to get them, even though they're here for a short period. I mean, to me, their home should be important to them. So if they want to do some work and can keep that prevention up, it only helps them in the long run with their investment. Anybody else?
I see a number of people here from the group that I've been harassing for 9 years. And I think they would all agree that they get an enormous amount of notes and comments and events and all this stuff done over and over again. Because we realize that everybody's busy and things slip. But if you get enough information, eventually people do show up. And it's been a terrific program because we've also had, sort of agents in each of our clusters. And they all can talk to their immediate neighbors. And that becomes the device by which the program has reached to the point that the state now says, write your own grant.
And one of the things that we're hoping to do through the grant program, and as we develop our plan, is to have citizen volunteers who are trained to help identify the issues around each home, so we can help our neighbors identify what are the issues that that they should address for their own safety and for the safety of the community and their neighbors. And once that is done, we realize that we have an aging community. There are going to be a lot of homes where the people who are living there do not have the physical capacity even to do the work. Maybe if they have some financial capacity, maybe they can hire people if they know what needs to be done. So we're going to try to help identify what those needs are. There's also volunteer programs here that we're hoping to enlist. We haven't even spoken to them yet, so I don't even want to start raising names like, Phippsburg Cares or Habitat for Humanity, stuff like that. But we're hoping to really engage the community. Maybe the Boy Scout program, the Scout programs, and other groups like that, church programs could jump in and help with their elderly parishioners, things like that. Did you want to say something? And then I see another hand up.
Just really briefly, I'd encourage you to look outside of Maine and New England at other examples. So I'm also working in California and Texas and Colorado on these types of plans. People there are losing their insurance due to wildfire risk. And there are programs in California now and in Colorado where you can get a break on your insurance if you have certain things done on or around your home. And so pie in the sky here for New England, right? We're kind of probably a long way from those sorts of things, or maybe not, but keep looking at programs that might encourage people that are more like top down from the government or from the insurance, that might encourage people to get involved rather than bottom up. Bottom up's the best. It's the best way to get people involved and to get the community involved. But think about a mix of approaches when you're thinking about, we call it risk assessment fatigue or fire prevention fatigue. It's a real thing, and that's okay. But there might be programs elsewhere that we can look to emulate. So I just wanted to say that.
I'll also say that, you know, we deal with fatigue all the time. We're constantly pushing the message about be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. How do you keep that message going? We have the philosophy in emergency management. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So keeping yourselves informed of that going on. I will also throw in a plug here that Saginaw County is putting in together a community emergency response team together. So we will be having our first academy in just a few weeks. So if you're interested, you know, reach out to our office as well.
I think I saw Holly, would you come up and introduce yourself and ask your question? And then you're next.
Thanks. Not so much a question, more of a comment. I'm Holly Morrison. I'm the pastor at the Phippsburg Congregational Church, the Center Church. And I heard about this process a few months back and got really interested because there are two real drivers for what I do in my calling. One is to protect the vulnerable, and the other is to keep looking for good news. And to me, this is an extraordinary opportunity for the community to get ahead of all of this, to be really proactive in the same way that after the incredible bad news of 1947, the state understood this new need to really help municipalities coordinate their fire response together. We have an opportunity now to take another big leap forward to prepare by coordinating within our community and making sure that we understand where the vulnerabilities are ahead of time. To me, that's good news, is as we face increasing pressure of fire seasons and invasives and everything else, that we go into this with a clear sense of how we can work together and really protect our vulnerable neighbors, protect our vulnerable creatures and, you know, beautiful woods and all of that. That this is just an extraordinary opportunity with the grant work and the already hundreds of volunteer hours that have gone into this as a community passion project, that this is really going to help all of us so much if we're able to pitch in and do it together.
Thank you, Holly. Oh, yeah, well, she's a hard act to follow no matter where you are. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Fred Bogue. I live right on the edge of Painted Point, the outside edge toward the main road. I just have a question. It's about access and it's about the vulnerability of a pretty major forest fire. We have a lot of woods. The prevailing winds are going to drive most of a heavy fire right up the peninsula. Do we have enough access for fire east to west? In other words, across, to get to a fire or whatever. And has there ever been any thoughts of, sorry to say this, but a fire break at some point? I mean, they use it all over the country. I understand it's people's lands, it's public land, but there has to be a point at which you could stop a fire.
Art, can you speak to that?
Well, I do know Kent's involved with a bunch of other communities, just like your community, and one of them, where'd George go? But George would know, one of them, they actually did put fire break they did some fire breaks around important areas. It was in that grant and they got Castine. Okay, so that is something that we could look into, or you guys could in your grant or your next grants coming forward. So.
That's what we'll be doing in the fire plan, is mapping areas for potential fuels, treatments, or fire breaks. So just wanted to add that that's part of the process.
Yes, and then Denise will be next. Come forward. Our portable phone, microphone, so.
Speaking about fire breaks, we were hired by Zach Longley to create the fire breaks on Sheep Island, which I believe helped save the homes out there. And clean up around his property. There are a lot of, regulation that goes along with these with town ordinances, which we helped him with. It was a process. We had been Maine Forestry, help us with, and that type of thing. And I do believe keeping your trees healthy in your yard, helps as well. And we do treat for all these pests and those types of things.
Is that Jared? Yeah. I met Jared on Sheep Island 10 years ago. We've all changed a bit. Denise, I think you had a question. Can you come forward? Sorry.
Just. Big question, money, who, with some of this, there are a lot of, you say a lot of vulnerable neighbors, whatever. Is there a grant, or could we create a grant that would maybe subsidize the cost of clearing some of the debris, the big trees, whatever that, employing hawks? It's great, but some people might not be able, some of our neighbors might not be able to afford that, so. I'm wondering.
As I understand it, yes, there are many opportunities, and I think Ariana is best capable of speaking to that once you have a wildfire protection plan in place.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that people are finding grant funding here, or not grant funding. So with some changes in politics, we've seen a lack of federal funds and more state and local funds. So these guys got funds from Maine Emergency Management. Congressionally directed funding is an earmark for Blue Hill, but we're seeing a lot of local entities vote for taxes on, for example, in Colorado, I think it's sports gambling, go towards wildfire mitigation funds for neighbors who qualify for financial assistance. So our job here is to take our experience from across the country to help recommend tools in our toolbox here in Phippsburg to reach those vulnerable populations that might not have the time, the money, the able bodies to get this work done. And so we'll be helping you all come up with those ideas along the way and getting your feedback on what you like and what you don't.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kate Bradford. I'm part of the Fiddlers, actually new president of Fiddlers Reach Association. We're way down Fiddlers Reach. And I have two questions. One came from a neighbor who could be here today. And she's very concerned because several of us have frontage right on the Kennebec. And she's really concerned about the fuel load of a lot of things that are within the 75-foot shoreline. So she's very concerned about that. That's question one. Question two, as a retired OC health and safety professional, as I started driving down the end of Fiddler's Reach, my concern about what happens if my one-way in and out gets cut. We experienced this winter before last when there was a downed power line and we weren't able to get out for 24 hours. I noticed, particularly this winter, as I was getting close to 209, there were a lot of downed trees, some of whom were exactly the ones that were lots of air. And is there a way to, short of calling CMP, because it's close, there's a lot of shrubs, bushes, down trees, etc., really close to the road, and it's been a concern of mine for a long time, but I'm not gonna go borrow my husband or grab my husband's chainsaw and go, do it. How can we communicate that in a way that, we coordinate this kind of thing as a preventive measure? So those two questions.
Thank you. I'll tackle number one if somebody wants to tackle number two. So everything we've done and we've talked about, that's not to supersede like shoreline zoning rules. And all my take with shoreline zoning, if it's dead, like you were talking about dead limbs earlier, like you can take that down. That's not violating any of that. But then also typically, coming from a wildfire background, the fire's not coming from usually the water's edge up. Sometimes it does if somebody's camping on the edge and doesn't put out their campfire, but usually your fire's coming from the woods towards your home, not from the shore where there's not as much fuel. But yeah, so anything dead, I think you would be more than fine to clean up. But yeah, we're not telling you to go and cut every tree like, within the 75-foot rule okay. And then number two.
I do want to speak to the 75-foot thing. Over on Sheep Island, one of my neighbors was very proactive and about this because his house was surrounded. And a lot of the houses around here are grandfathered in. You couldn't build as close to the water's edge now as many of them. Some of them are literally right on the water. And you couldn't build there. And then you get surrounded by brush. And then the shoreline zoning ordinance doesn't allow you to cut it. Well, my neighbor went to the select board of Harpswell and got a variance and got permission to cut the trees around his house so he could fire strengthen his house. And that is one thing that we could do here. Lee Rainey is a good man and he is sensitive to this issue. And I think you can build a convincing case that some clearing needs to be done around these grandfathered homes. Is there somebody else who wants to address? Who's the real guy?
As far as the sides roads, I'm in contact with Curtis Dowdy, the road commissioner, to try to get these things cut up, and we contact Jared and they come down and they clean them out, the ones that are leaning off the road. We have several of those a year. Of course, it's a money issue. The town doesn't have money to do it. The state roads, we can't do anything on the state roads because that's a state, 209, Small Point, Popham, those are all state roads. We can't cut on them. That's a responsibility. But if we do see some that are hanging down, I contact Curtis and he contacts Jared and we try to take care of them as much as we can, as far as the money goes. Yeah.
I will mention that after the Sheep Island fire, we were very grateful for Jared Hawks. Because he came over and brought equipment. You remember that, Jared? For the Longley family. He brought stuff over to this island on a barge and we offloaded all this amazing equipment. You couldn't imagine how you could get tractors and all kinds of shipping material and stuff onto this island, but he did it. And really helped us a lot in dealing with the aftermath of that fire. Any other questions? Okay, you've been really, really patient. I really appreciate your attention. Let's have a hand for all the folks who presented today. And if you haven't had a chance to pet the dog, look, he knows all about it. Okay, folks, please, before you go, peruse these tables. There's sign-up sheets for each of these three teams, the environmental folks, and the training on June 10th would be really great. If you know families that have kids, we would like to enlist school kids to do some of this work. So please sign up for one or more of these committees. And all you need to do is put your name. If you signed it up front, we have your contact information. Thank you for coming.
I didn't bring it up. Yeah.